Welcome back to Uprising. I'm Sonali Kohatkar. You can now watch Uprising online at our YouTube channel at youtube.com/uprising with Sonali. Please do subscribe. On December 7th, 1964, the Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. gave an hour-long speech at Temple Hall in London. He was on his way to Oslo to claim his Nobel Peace Prize. It was a time of intense transformation in the United States, months after the passage of the Civil Rights Act and months before the Voting Rights Act was enacted. After years of painful struggle, the civil rights movement was gaining ground and making real change. While contemporary films such as Selma have memorialized Dr. King and the historic movement that he led, there's nothing like hearing King's own voice, his passions, his cadence, and the questions of injustice that drove him. The December 7, 1964 speech was lost, and the only piece of it that ever remained was a 2-minute, 45-second video from the BBC, which reported it. But 50 years later, the Pacifica Radio Archives discovered the entire recording of the 62-minute-long speech hidden for decades in its vault. Brian DeShazer, director of the Pacifica Radio Archives, discovered the speech in real format and oversaw its preservation. On Monday, on the occasion of Martin Luther King Jr. Day, Democracy Now! Will debut a lengthy excerpt of the speech, and today we're so proud to present for our audience a tiny excerpt, an exclusive debut of a speech that hasn't been heard in 50 years and is the only known recording of the speech. Here is the Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. speaking in London City Temple Hall on December 7th, 1964. First, you'll hear one of his London hosts introducing him and warning the audience not to heckle.
He is an honored guest from a country which I believe, unlike Britain, has no tradition, as we have, of heckling and interruption. And I ought to say that in America, disagreements are, I believe, reserved for question time. Now, I'm sure that all of us tonight, whatever views we hold, will afford Dr. King the courtesy of a fair hearing, even those of us who may disagree with him. And I ought to say that the stewards have my instructions to ask anybody who feels emotionally moved to interrupt to leave the hall immediately.
I want to talk with you mainly about our struggle in the United States, and before taking my seat, talk about some of the larger struggles in the whole world, and some of the more difficult struggles in places like South Africa. But that is a desperate, poignant question on the lips of people all over our country and all over the world. I get it almost everywhere I go and almost every press conference. It is a question of whether we are making any real progress in the struggle to make racial justice a reality in the United States of America. And whenever I seek to answer that question, on the one hand, I seek to avoid an undue pessimism. On the other hand, I seek to avoid a superficial optimism. And I try to incorporate or develop what I consider a realistic position by admitting on the one hand that we have made many significant strides over the last few years in the struggle for racial justice, but by admitting that before the problem is solved, we still have numerous things to do and many challenges to meet. And it is this realistic position that I would like to use as a basis for our thinking together tonight as we think about the problem in the United States. We have come a long, long way, but we have a long, long way to go before the problem is solved.